Hello lovely. In this video we are going to create a background using embossing powder and watercolour resist technique. So initially I've just prepped my photos. I'm just cutting them down a little bit, taking half an inch off them, just so they're a little bit smaller, and I'm using a piece of white cardstock which I am going to splatter with watercolour. I'm just going to mix up a bit of watercolour on my palette and just spatter it on. I'm not using a lot of water, I just want to break the blank page so it's not so stark and white. And then I'm going to dry it off with my heat gun. Now when you do this technique, each time you add water or watercolour to your paper, dry it thoroughly first. It really does make all the difference. Now, I'm just giving myself an idea of where the photos are going to go, so that I'm not working in an area that I'm going to hide, like I'm guaranteed to hide. And then I'm stamping the embossing ink onto my card, covering it in the embossing powder, and heating it so that it melts. I'm going to do this in a few places. What it's going to do when we add the next layer of watercolour is create a resist technique, so you're going to see the hearts. And I'm using what is actually clear embossing powder. You could also use white, or you could use a colour if you prefer. It's entirely up to you. I used the clear in this particular one, just it was a bit of an experiment to see whether the technique would or wouldn't work. So once I have finally embossed all these areas, I'm going to clear up after myself, because otherwise I send embossing powder everywhere. And then we're going to move on to adding a layer of watercolour over the embossed area. So again, I'm just mixing up some of that orange paint and I'm putting it in a few different areas, adding bit more pigment here and there. I'm not using a huge amount of water because this cardstock will not take a lot of water. It will start to absorb in. It's not a watercolour paper, it's not a thicker marshmallow type cardstock, it's just white cardstock. So I don't want to oversaturate it. One thing I wasn't too keen on was that there were only 4 areas. I do like to work in odd numbers, so I added an extra area of stamping and then just added a little bit more of the colour on top to bring it together, just make it a little more cohesive and look like it's meant to be there rather than the afterthought that it was. Now I'm going to move on and start to stick down my photos after this, so almost, and I want to make this a very simple layout, so there's not going to be a lot of stuff on it. I want the background resist technique we've done to really stand out, and if I cover too much of that up it's not going to work. If I add too many patterns it's not going to work. So I've pulled out just a couple of papers from my scraps box and I'm going to cut them with my circle punch. Just punch 3 circles from each one. I'm going to tuck them in under the photographs. I've worked in 3s here. Anyone who's done some art will have heard of the rule of 3s, and you know, it's a really nice simple way of pulling your pages together. I'm going to add a bit of washi tape and I'm going to add washi to each of the 3 areas as well. And like I say, it's more for cohesive and continuity on the page. It helps pull all that together, and as you can see I am covering up some of the watercolour and the resist, but not huge amounts. My next stage is to go on and just pull out some embellishments. I'm not pulling out lots, I'm just pulling out colours and things I think might work. Some of them will go on, some of them won't. And I just try different bits here and there. Now I've got a brad from an old collection and that I thought worked really well because of the colour. It matches so nicely, so I want to get that on. And also I've got a couple of blue label stickers where I've literally just got the blue peeking through at the edge. Not so that you see the entire label, but so you just see that blue edge around the side. I've also added some arrows. These are cork arrows from Studio Calico, and a few enamel dots hither and thither, because I really do love enamel dots. I think they're amazing. Now I'll move on to adding a title, and what I do to add my titles, as you may or may not know, I just run through my alphas, look for things that may or may not work, and then I start to almost audition them. Now I've got a lot of yellow and orange in there, so this yellow thicker makes perfect sense to use. And to add a bit of contrast, I've used a cork effect thicker as well, which also pulls in those cork arrows that I've used. Title is Slightly Obsessed by Trains because, well, that's what the memory is. That's what these photos are from being on the footplate of a steam train. So we'll get that in, and then you'll be able to see the finished piece. And like I say, I've kept it ridiculously simple so that this resist background really comes to the forefront and has its place, even though it's sitting at the back of the page. It's what pulls the eye in, it makes it interesting, it makes it a bit different. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I really hope that you enjoyed watching this video and watching this page come together. I will see you next time for another scrapbook process video, and if you enjoyed what you see, please subscribe to my channel. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at InkyPaws, and thank you so much for being with me. Take care and have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!